What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. Week 2 of the Major 2 qualifiers finished on Sunday. It was a day of Call of Duty. We'll just leave it at that. Cover that in my next video. But as always, on Mondays, we're going to break down the tier list of where teams rank right now in the CDL. Let's dive in and see if there's any movement. Okay, as always, in this video, here was the tier list from last week. And if you are new to this, I don't do the letter tier thing. I don't find that like particularly helpful in really evaluating kind of where I want to bracket these teams. It becomes very subjective. So we have these categories: Sunday regulars, usually top 4 teams, but top 3 right now. I'll get to that in a second. Potential contenders is going to be everybody else kind of in the top 6, top 8. Pretty much all the teams you're going to see likely qualifying for champs. Work to do is really the squads that are kind of on that next bubble. Either they need to roster change or improve certain things about their overall game in order to sort of create more win conditions, win more series. And then missing pieces are going to be teams that just aren't in contention right now. That's not to say they're going to go 0-5 last at the major, but they're not going to be favored in many series that they play and probably need a roster change to get to their spot. All right, let's start off with the defending champions, the New York Subliners. They won Major 1. They had 2 matches this week against Florida and FaZe. They took care of Florida pretty easy. We'll get to the one slip up there. And then the series against FaZe was, I don't really know how to describe this one. I mean, the hard points weren't that close. New York dominated them. But FaZe was the better search team. And the Control Hotel, I think New York was up 2-0 in that map and kind of fumbled the bag on that one. So I think New York probably feels like they could have won this series 3-1 if they had really not let that control slip. I think the bigger problem for New York right now, because their hard point looks great. They're probably the best hardpoint team in the game other than maybe LAG in terms of form right now. But taking a look at the S&Ds they have played so far in the Major 2 cycle, they beat Thieves on an Asilo search, but honestly, Thieves probably should have won that map. They lost an Asilo S&D against Florida, which it's Florida's best map, but New York really couldn't handle them on that. They lost 2 S&Ds to FaZe yesterday, one on Fortress, kind of the weirdest Fortress we've ever watched with a lot of B hits going on in that map. And then an S&D Embassy, I know it started about 15 different times due to lag and this and that, but FaZe got it done in round 10. So I think for New York right now, the one thing they need to clean up going into the Major 2 LAN event is just getting a little bit better at search, because you could argue that ideally it should probably be 0 for what? 0 for 4 in search right now, if you want to count that Thieves 1 on either side of it. So I'm going to leave New York as is. They're just nasty at respawn. I think they're just going to continue to just roll teams in that, but the search needs to get better. Otherwise, they're going to maybe have a funky time going back to get back against some of these squads that are always going to be able to match them and take a respawn and maybe 2 searches and hit the 5. And speaking of 2-3-5, let's talk about FaZe, because they had a super weird week. They got smoked by the Rocker 3-0. I don't think anyone saw that coming. And then we just talked about the New York series. You know, opposite of the New York thing where, you know, they're really good at hardpoint and get S&D. FaZe have been like money in search pretty much the whole year. They're up there probably with Vegas and Florida as your best S&D teams in the game right now. The problem is they just can't win a hard point right now. At least this week they went 0 for 3 in that mode. And honestly, the 2 they played against the Subliners weren't all that close. And they got a combined less than 250 points, it looks like. So that's not ideal across 2 maps. They just look a little bit timid in hard point, a little conservative, not really playing with the fluidity that we expect from this team. So I think they got to open things a little bit up on that end, but not really super worried about FaZe. I think control has been cleaned up a little bit in this stage, which is nice. I think you're seeing a little bit more from Alston on that map, which is they need. Your AR is going to be able to watch crosses, especially on Hotel. Yeah, I mean, I think for FaZe, we're going to keep them in Sunday regulars. They've been one of the more consistent teams. So yeah, I think I'm going to keep FaZe in Sunday regulars. They've been one of your most consistent teams across 4 years of the CDL. I don't see that changing right now. Do have a pretty tough schedule this week. They got to play LAG in the what I call the jet ski Fernando Bowl, and then they got to play OPTIC. So they need one more win to guarantee winners. I think they'll probably get it done against LAG, and then the OPTIC match might be kind of weird with both teams potentially being like 4-0 going into it. So FaZe look good for winners, look good for a good seed. Let's see what they do this week going into the LAN event. Continue it, moving on the Sunday regulars front. We're going to talk about the Toronto Ultra. Pretty interesting week for them as well. I think all 3 teams in Sunday regulars kind of had a bit of a interesting week if you think about it. They absolutely smoked Thieves, but Thieves were playing with Capsule as a substitute on like no practice. And then Toronto had a little bit of a humbling against an OPTIC team coming off their new roster, and we'll get to them later on in this video. So a 1-1 week for Toronto, which is not too bad because they're currently sitting at 3-1, and they have one more match coming up against LAG I believe, next week. So Toronto looked good for a top seed going into this major. I don't really know what to criticize with this team. I mean, they were on pretty much like a complete map run before the OPTIC series. The only map they really lost was, you're going to guess, in the CDL search against Florida. Team that just is nasty on that map. But OPTIC beat them in 2 hard points and an S&D. So let's see how Ultra do against LAG, who are going to be another really good quality opponent in hard point. But Toronto should outclass them in the control and the search and probably take that. So let's see what happens. Toronto look good value to be one of your teams that make it to the weekend right now at the Major 2 LAN. All right, we're going to get up to the next category, and I'm going to be a little bit spicy with this one. We got to talk about Seattle, who are hardcore slumping right now. Unfortunately, after a really tough first week in the qualifiers, they squared up against OPTIC with their new roster, and it was a pretty interesting series. Seattle took both hard points in that series, but OPTIC outclassed them in the search and beat them in the control. I just, for this Seattle team that's going to probably start in losers for this major, is right now sitting in 0-3 hole, and they got to play New York and Rocker coming up next week. I don't feel good about these guys going into they're gonna have to make a losers run, and unfortunately, like, they're just not good at search. So I'm just, for now, I'm gonna put them in work to do. We might move them back up after we finish this, but Seattle, until they get better at search, are just gonna be like super week to week, event to event. It's hard for me to see them as definitely anywhere close to Sunday regulars. And I'm actually, let's put them in the back of potential contenders for now. Let's see how this shuffles out, but they're really sliding down the standings here, at least for this major, until they can figure out their search. And because of this, we got OPTIC kind of in the front of this category, and I think I feel pretty good about leaving them there. Obviously, they are playing with their new squad, with Scump retiring, moving to being a full-time content creator, and having his own studio watch party show, which is pretty cool. Shout out to Seth and the team for pulling that one off this week. They had 2 matches this week, and they were both pretty exciting ones. Obviously, we just talked about the Seattle series. They went to 5, and then we had Toronto Ultra, which we talked about 3 minutes ago. So a good 2-0 for OPTIC. They're actually 3-0 right now in this major qualifier. They have Vegas and FaZe coming up. For OPTIC, I think the biggest thing that this squad has taken a step in is really search. I don't think they've lost an S&D since the roster change. I think the only search they've lost so far this entire major cycle is the Embassy. But I talked to Shotzi after that series, and I think they made some big adjustments going into that Seattle series in terms of Embassy. Like Shotzi stopped running bomb. They've got Kyler running bomb on the map. So I feel good about OPTIC right now. I want to probably potentially at the end of next week move them up to Sunday regulars, because I think that they are looking good value to get top 4 at this event based on where everybody else is netting. But for now, because I don't want to kind of, overthink 1 week, and there may be some regression with this team with a little more practice and teams watching VOD, we're going to leave them at the top of this category. But they're really on the edge of this, and I really like the progress very quickly this new OPTIC team is making with Dashy back in the lineup. Next, we have the Boston Breach, who I believe played only 1 match this week against Vegas. They did a pretty good job in that one. Outside, though, of getting smoked on Mercado, which is still a problem for Boston, that map, and a little bit of that mode to an extent. They're kind of like floating right now about 500 in search. So I don't want to overthink it. But again, the same things kind of still exist with this Boston team. Like, they are solid against teams that they outclass and respawn. They're going to play Florida, who I expect to probably do the same. But do the same thing they did to Vegas, probably get them done in 4 and win that. And then they play Thieves, and we don't know if that's going to be with or without Kenny. But Boston is good value to have a really good showing at their home major. I just don't think they're in that elite category of teams until they really make one of those runs. And I think the shortcomings in those big matches, the shortcomings right now in their S&D game, as well as their control game, surprisingly, I think are kind of limiting their ceiling right now. All right, next up, we talk about the LA Thieves here, the last team we had in this potential contenders category. They had 2 matches this week, and unfortunately, Kenny was out of the lineup due to sickness, illness. So they had Capsule actually come in and play for them this week, and he did pretty good. They went 1-1 this week. I think the problem for Thieves is, even though they split, lost to Toronto, beat London, they're probably going to need some help in order to get into the Major 2 winners bracket. Their last match coming up is against Boston next week, and so if they win that and they're 2-3, they might just squeak in on map count and tiebreakers. We'll see. It's hard for me to figure out like where I really want to put this LA Thieves team. Playing with substitutes, so it's hard to take away from what they did. They were definitely mega slumping in respawn, but they looked better, honestly, in hard points this week. Even though they lost that Mercado to Toronto, even with Cap, like, they looked a lot better on that map. So I'm going to leave them in this contenders category for now. I think we're going to move a couple teams up and down here in the next two categories. So let's revisit that in a second. All right, we're moving down a category. We're going to go ahead and talk about the Vegas Legion, who haven't really addressed any of the issues that we sort of know from this team. They had two matches this week. Boston 3-1 them. And again, another series where Vegas just can't hold their own in the respawns. And then unfortunately London beat them as well, and essentially the same problem was a 3-1 with Vegas taking map 2. We're gonna have to leave Vegas in this work to do category. I don't want to spend too much time on this. We've talked a lot about this team. I think Clay obviously needs to step up, and he tweeted about it after the weekend that I think he feels individually he's not playing well, but I also think their sub players kind of go missing sometimes in the respawn. As good as this team is in search, if they don't get better in respawn, they are a fluky team with a very narrow win condition. So we're going to leave them in work to do. They've got to figure out that respawn game mode if they want to get a decent placing at Major 2, or also qualify for winners bracket, because right now they're sitting at 1 and 2, and they need to play subliners and optics. So they might be 1 and 4 actually, and starting in losers for this next event. We got the Florida Mutineers coming up next, and they're very similar to Vegas. Like they've won like maybe one. Looking at it right now, I think they've won one respawn. Yeah, they've won one respawn map entire in 3 matches so far in the Major 2 qualifier. So that's not good. I don't know where to really put this Florida team. They're very similar to Vegas, but I feel like if I move one down to missing pieces, I got to move the other team down to missing pieces. We might just for now pull the trigger on that. Just because I think until proven otherwise, both these teams have really narrow win conditions and they have very tough schedules. Florida is 1 and 2 right now, and they need to play London and Boston. And I think they're probably going to end up 2 and 3 with that London match being a must win. And if they can't get that done, they're going to start in losers. And if they start in losers, I think they're going to be out on Friday. So both Vegas and Florida got to figure out respawn. They're pretty much in the same boat in terms of like how things net out for them on that front. All right, we got the Minnesota Rocker coming up here next, and they had an absolute roller coaster this week to carry over from the roller coaster they had last week. This team still got some funky problems with maps 1 and 2, although they won those against FaZe in the 3-0. But then LAG kind of, took map 1 and 2 against them. Rocker took the hotel control, and then we never were able to see the Fortress hardpoint that they played yesterday because of issues with the studio here in Columbus, and they weren't able to carry the game. I think due to a power outage. I think there was a car accident or something knocked that power to the building, which is super unfortunate. But either way, the same problems really exist for Rocker. Like, they can't really win map 1 and map 2 at a decent clip. After this weekend, they're currently sitting at 4-9 in game 1 and 5-8 in game 2. So 31% and 38% respectfully in both of those games. They do pretty good on the back end of series right now, and their control game's actually very good. They might actually be statistically one of the best control teams in the game right now at 10 and 3. But if they need to figure out how to win map 1 and 2, I think to be a little more consistent, you know what I'm going to do is I think Rocker, because at this point they're 2 and 2, they've got Seattle coming to make it into winners. I'm going to bump them up here. We're going to end up sliding a team or two down here. And I think preemptively, I'm just going to probably do Seattle on that front. To me, the reason I'm kind of thinking this, and we haven't gotten to LAG yet, is even though Rocker's got these game 1, game 2 issues, and, I think that's why their hardpoint record's not good, I feel like they maybe turned a corner in the future, and Seattle's slumping hard. I think if they were to play each other, I think Minnesota probably takes it 2 out of 3 times right now, so I don't really feel confident about any of these teams on the bubble, but if I got to move someone up, I think it's going to be Rocker. Let's talk about the LA Gorillas, because this might complicate things, because I haven't really thought this one through yet. Obviously, they're still riding with this roster change that that they've made in regards to basically squad wiping a majority of their team and bringing in basically 3 of the players from LAG Academy. They had 1 match this week, and they beat the Rockers, so now this kind of complicates my thinking a little. Like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to put them? These two teams are very similar. LAG right now, I would say their biggest issue is control. They did kind of turn a corner in search this weekend. So LAG is really trending upwards. I think probably more so than Minnesota. I just don't know how I want to kind of juggle these teams right now. It's sort of this like really sort of tight pack of stuff here. I think almost like maybe what I do is like this, kind of finish things out, because we haven't talked about London yet, and maybe let's kind of wrap into that right now if you guys don't mind, and this will kind of finish the thinking here. London had a pretty interesting week playing Thieves and getting fried, and then they played Vegas and had a pretty good series, and Maddie, Marshall, aka Scraps, went off. I still think, unfortunately, for the London boys, although they were able to stop their like 7 or 8 game losing streak, they do have to play Florida. We're going to be a tough team for them to match in these, but I think they could potentially take it. I just think with some of the losses against other bubble teams, they're going to make the winners. I don't know if they're going to do enough to start there. And just in general, I don't think London looked very good. So at the moment, I don't think they've done anything to convince me they're not still the 12th best team in the CDL. So we're going to leave them there. And then now let's get back to sort of this cluster. Let's think this through real quick before we lock this in. So Optic, I think we keep. Boston, we keep. There's a question of what do we want to do with Thieves, and this is like the biggest question mark in all of this, because I feel a little bit better about LAG right now than I do on Thieves. And then these two are kind of like, I don't know what to make of this situation between these two teams. Like Rocker are a roller coaster. Thieves are a big question mark because of their prior struggles before all this Kenny stuff. So I don't know what version of team they're going to even have at the event. You know what we might do is we might just kind of leave this as is, and it'll kind of clarify itself after this week. Feel good about moving Seattle down just because they're just kind of really hardcore slumping as a team. Vegas and Florida kind of in the same boat in terms of same win issues. I think we'll leave this in this kind of cluster. I think this order kind of makes sense to me. I know we moved LAG a lot up, but they had a really, really good week, and I want to tip that. Because I think they may be able to ride this honeymoon a bit if I need to take a guess into the next event. The only thing for LAG, though, I'll say this, is they have to play FaZe and Ultra this week, so they may then slip further back. After this week, as good as a week they had against like Thieves and Rocker, who are these bubble teams, so I kind of need to put them a little bit ahead of them at the moment. I feel good about this. Obviously, that leaves us with what? 3, 6, 8 teams at the top and the other 4 at the bottom. I guess that kind of makes sense based on what I've said before. Not a clear number 4 team just yet in the CDL, but I think Optic's probably going to take that spot after next week. So I think this will even itself out. Fun one. Apologies for the live thinking as we do this video, but tier lists are hard, man, and I try to be as best I can about it. So let me know in the comments what y'all think. Punk me on Reddit, etc., etc. If you like the video, subscribe. We're gonna do more recap content a little bit in this week from week 2. We're gonna talk a little bit about challengers I think coming up with the playoffs resolving itself. We'll cover that later on this week once those are done on Thursday, and we'll look forward to the last week of matches. I'm super excited. Boston is setting up to be a great major. If you haven't gotten your tickets already, make sure you do that. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.